All right, we're back with episode 3 of the 3&D podcast. This time we're gonna talk. This time we've got me, Justin Genus, along with Brendan Murphy and Zachary Genus. No special guest on this episode. Today we're gonna discuss the NBA awards and the award show. As you guys know, Harden won MVP and Gobert won Defensive Player of the Year, and controversially to some, Ben Simmons won Rookie of the Year. So, what do you guys think? Were there any huge surprises to you guys at the award show, or did everybody you thought was going to win?
I think there was a big surprise in my mind. I mean, not necessarily in terms of actually the surprise, but I was disappointed to see Donovan Mitchell not win Rookie of the Year. I'm one of his biggest fans, and just seeing Ben Simmons walk up on that stage as a second-year player hurt me a little bit.
All right, so Brendan, let me get this straight. Do you think that Simmons had a better season, or do you think Mitchell had a better season than Simmons, or do you think that Simmons just shouldn't have been eligible and that's why you're disappointed that he won?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both there. I mean, in my eyes, when I look at Donovan Mitchell, I think he had a better season than Ben Simmons did. And also, I mean, just the performance of the Jazz. I mean, the Jazz looked great. Rudy Gobert was out for a few different stretches as well, and they still did a great job, even in the playoffs. And there's no question that Donovan Mitchell is a rookie, and there is some question if Ben Simmons is. So I think all of those favor Donovan Mitchell.
How is there? I don't understand. How is there a question if Simmons is a rookie? He is a rookie. Mitchell wore a shirt that gave the definition, and Simmons fits that definition.
What was the definition?
The definition was a rookie, someone in their first year of playing basketball.
Well, he played basketball in Summer League, didn't he?
Well, neither of them were in their first year of playing basketball, but I think you're referring to the NBA.
Right.
And for that reason, it is an obvious fact that Ben Simmons is a rookie. It's also obvious that he had the best season, therefore he deserved Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, it's not like MVP, where it's about value to your team. It's just who was the better player. Simmons averaged only a couple less points, but he had way more assists, way more rebounds, similar amount of steals, more blocks. I mean, and he shot a higher percentage.
This is where maybe I'm a little bit inconsistent. I think LeBron is far and away the best player in the world, but it's not even close. Like, to me, it's not even like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're all LeBron. And LeBron plays a lot like Ben Simmons, and I really devalue that scoring. But here, I devalue some of that lack of scoring, because I think if you're not an elite level, or you're not an absolutely elite passer and an elite rebounder like LeBron is, I feel like I'd take scoring over that.
So you're telling me Simmons isn't an elite passer?
He's not an elite passer.
You can't name 5 guys who pass better than Ben Simmons right now. You can't.
I can try.
Yeah, but you'll be wrong if you do. Maybe what? Jokic, LeBron, Chris Paul, Rondo. So Brendan, that's 4. Can you name one more passer better than Ben Simmons?
I mean, Ricky Rubio, maybe.
It's a big maybe.
And you know, fifth best. I mean, I feel like right now we're not at a shortage of great passers, but there's not a lot of guys left that we can say are amazing passers. You know, we really just go to Chris Paul and LeBron.
But still, you say Donovan Mitchell's scoring is so much better than Simmons is. Maybe as far as from a skill perspective, like he's a better scorer, but Simmons only averaged a few less points.
I still think impact on. To me, Gobert is not that much worse than Embiid. I think it's pretty close. And I think in the season where Donovan Mitchell was the best player on the team, there were never stretches in the season when Ben Simmons was the best player on the Sixers.
They went on a 19-game winning streak, and most of it was without Embiid. Where Simmons was the guy.
If somebody asked you who the best player on the team was, you never had trouble saying it was Embiid.
Yeah, but when it comes down to it, it's not. We're not comparing who was the best player on their team. We're comparing who was the best player, and Simmons was better than Donovan Mitchell. It's not a playoff award, Brendan.
Well, I mean, you look at the seeding; they're both like seeded exactly the same, right?
Yeah, but
And
it's not a playoff
the
award.
West is better, so that means they did better throughout the regular
That's a
season.
team.
And the reason they did well,
Brendan, it's an
yeah,
individual award.
Donovan
It's not
Mitchell had
like
a bigger
MVP.
impact on the Jazz than Ben Simmons had on the Sixers.
It's an individual award. And you still haven't told me
Individual,
why Donovan
if it's an
Mitchell had a
individual
better
award,
season.
the only reason people say Ben Simmons is better is because of all the intangibles. So if it's an individual award, then
It's
it's
not
definitely
intangibles.
Donovan.
He averaged more assists, steals, blocks, and rebounds. And he shot a higher percentage.
But that's like an eye test award. That's like saying, oh yeah, he's like, oh yeah, he's better. So then we'll give it to him.
What?
To me, the scoring that Donovan Mitchell brought to the table in the first season in the league, and the assists, playmaking, and his defense, and just overall athleticism, is more valuable as a rookie than Ben Simmons was as a second-year player.
He's a rookie. Second of all, you're saying these things to me, but you still have no proof. Like, his playmaking isn't better than Simmons, his rebounding isn't better, his defense isn't better. Well, for this podcast, we're gonna have to let Zach be the deciding vote here. Who would you have chosen for your Rookie of the Year, Zachary?
Like I said before, I'm on that Ben Simmons side when it comes to Rookie of the Year, just because he was a better all-around player. For the same reasons I believe LeBron is the best player in the league, I believe Ben Simmons was the best rookie in the league this season.
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
an all-around. He's a better. Just because he doesn't lead the league in scoring or lead rookies in scoring, doesn't mean he's a worse player. He has all the aspects that you want in a player in terms of, at least with a rookie. I mean, he's got the rebounding, he's got the vision, he's all that they expected to be, and maybe even more. That they expected him to be.
Except Donovan Mitchell's more than anybody expected him to be.
but Ben Simmons,
that's not what it's based on.
Ben Simmons' expectations were higher. But that's not even what the award's based on. It's just based on the fact that Simmons played better. I know that Mitchell's your darling from the summer league, and he was on your fantasy team.
I
But
picked him up week one.
Oh, that's what it is. That's what
yep,
it is.
We can move on to the next award now, I think. Well, I think the other contentious award, most people don't really think about Defensive Player of the Year as much, but MVP every year is such a high honor, and I think most people agree that Harden should have won MVP as it's awarded this year, though I think you might have something to say about that, Zach. Do you guys think with LeBron, I think after these playoffs proving he's better and more important to his team than Harden, what do you guys think of the idea that the MVP should be, since it's awarded after the playoffs, should include the playoffs?
I think that's a perfect way to handle the MVP. But I think if you did that, then Russell Westbrook and James Harden never would have won their awards because, I mean, simply they don't show up in the playoffs. And you can't do that. If we judge a player's greatness and their longevity and their career overall by their playoff performances mainly, then that should at least be half of the equation in the MVP. Although you can't give too much credence to it because then you have guys like Bismack Biyombo who come out 2 years ago for the Raptors and ball out. And they get a huge contract they don't reserve and now are in a position where they're getting overpaid. So, I mean, obviously,
I can tell you're speaking as a Magic fan there at the end of that statement. Zach, would you have given Harden? Zach, would you have given Harden the MVP this year?
No, I would have given it to LeBron James, and that's not just because. It's awarded after the playoffs. I saw a stat in the 2017-2018 season over 82 games. Well, Harden only played 72. But LeBron had almost twice as many rebounds, 100 more assists, 9% better field goal percentage, the same three-point percentage, almost twice as many double-doubles, and four times as many triple-doubles.
Wait, so Harden does not... So you're telling me Harden shoots the same three-point percentage as LeBron?
Yes, I am.
That's crazy.
And LeBron scored more points. So to say... I mean, points per game was Harden, but Harden played 10 less games.
Right.
But to say that that Harden's the MVP, and then once you get to the playoffs, his team doesn't perform, get us even close to as far. Well, they got close, but I wouldn't give Harden the credit for that. He
Yeah.
just had a better team.
And then you see what
I'm just
happened
saying.
when Chris Paul wasn't playing, all of a sudden they couldn't keep up with the Warriors. So maybe that too points to the fact that maybe Harden's not quite as valuable as he seemed during the regular season.
Right. LeBron was the only reason that his team got anywhere. Harden, not so much.
Yeah. I guess if you look at it that way, it's kind of hard to argue with LeBron as the MVP. Do you guys? And I just realized if we awarded Coach of the Year after the playoffs, Dwayne Casey wouldn't have even come close because every year in the playoffs, and you can't always blame the coach for this, but every year in the playoffs,
I think coach is different.
Coach is different, you say? But
I think so.
I could say that,
play
but
the highest seed is a lower seed, and you just give it to Steve Kerr every year. And obviously, Steve Kerr's not the best coach.
One of the good things about Coach of the Year to me is that they don't. For one, they do a good job of acknowledging different coaches, and part of that is because the rule is coach can't win 2 years in a row. So that's a good system. But I think we all know Brad Stevens would have won Coach of the Year had the playoffs been included because of what he did without Kyrie and without Hayward, getting the team, helping players look like play above their talent level or their perceived talent level. So Zach, would you say awards before or after?
That one's hard for me just because if you make the awards after and include the playoffs, what about those players who they're not as dominant as LeBron, so they can't necessarily carry a team to the finals every year, but they're still great players who may deserve an award.
Or in the West. They're in the West.
Yeah, or they're in the West, and they can't carry their team to the playoffs or deep to the playoffs. I don't think it's fair to just neglect those players because of their situation.
Yeah, I agree with you, Zach. Even though you made a good it might seem like I think that the playoffs should be included, but I really just supported Zach's argument for LeBron over Harden, even though the award's traditionally given to the best player on the best team. Westbrook, who I believe was the MVP last season, could not have won the award had they included the playoffs, even though he was the most valuable player to his team in the league by far. Even though some people like to say Harden, I think that if you replace Westbrook was truly irreplaceable on that Thunder team, save maybe for LeBron, whereas I think you could have found a few other elite players that could fill in for Harden, and they would have had the same amount of success. How about Brendan? Would you go after, or include or not include the playoffs?
I think you have to include the playoffs. I don't think there's any question about it. I think it's the totality of a season, and I think that the season includes the playoffs.
So you would take the chance that someone like Westbrook doesn't end up getting that MVP, but still.
Well, then LeBron should get it because LeBron should get it every year.
Even when he's on a team with significantly more talent than someone whose team has a similar record.
Were the Cavs better than the Thunder?
Last year, yes, they were by a lot.
Last year, they definitely were not. When Westbrook won the MVP, it's possible that they were.
Well, yeah, I'm saying last year as in not this past season, the season before.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Well, but at the same time, I think the reason we say the Cavs were so good was because of LeBron.
Yeah, but take away obviously the Cavs aren't finals contenders. That Cavs roster wasn't a finals contender without LeBron, but they still had Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, whereas the next best player on Westbrook's team was Steven Adams, who is a player who can't create on his own. And Oladipo, who even though some people like to blame Westbrook for him not being as good in OKC, there are definitely factors besides Westbrook, including Oladipo just becoming a wildly improved player. A wildly improved player that was the reason he wasn't great in the Thunder. He just wasn't as good at basketball.
Well, and also he wasn't given the reins. On the Magic, he was given the reins, but the coaching was god awful and the players were awful. The Pacers have a good, office. They haven't ever had a bad season, it seems like. I mean, they're never in the lottery. So that was just a stable position for him to be given. And he went to college in Indiana. I mean, this is a safe place for him to be good.
Speaking of Oladipo, though, huge props to him. I forgot to mention him earlier. He had such a great year compared to what everybody was expecting. And he deserved the Most Improved Player award by a wide margin. I remember a conversation I had with you, Zach, where we talked about the team that has the worst best players. So the best player on that team is worse than everyone else's best player. And we pretty much at the time before the season, it pretty much came down to the Bulls and the Pacers. We were actually saying Miles Turner is better than Oladipo, but he really stepped his game up this year. I know, Brendan, that probably hurt to see.
It did. Remember, he's my favorite player ever, but for 3 seasons.
Right. And I think, you know what separates him from other Most Improved Player winners? He was a guy that people knew he had the talent, and still he showed that he was so much better than everyone expected. Like when Jokic didn't have any doubters or anything before he won, or it was the same year as Giannis. Giannis and Jokic didn't really have doubters coming into that season. Or CJ McCollum, nobody knew who he was. And then he came out of nowhere.
You have to remember that was the worst draft class ever.
Yeah, but Oladipo, people had seen flashes and they were like, I guess he's just, especially after the year with the Thunder, I guess he was only good because he was on a bad team. And he came out, and I haven't checked the full voting numbers, but he probably got some MVP votes this year. So huge props to him. How do you guys feel about Dwayne Casey winning Coach of the Year, and then subsequently getting fired? Should that even be a thing? Should that be a thing?
Well, the Raptors are the dumbest organization I've ever seen in my life. That's not the coach's fault.
Are you including the Magic? Or how about the Kings?
That's a fair point, dude.
That was one of the dumbest decisions you've seen, in your opinion, though. Yeah.
It was really dumb. DeRozan can't play in the playoffs, and Lowry doesn't either. So, I mean, it just comes down to that.
Well, Zach, do you think? Yeah.
It's just he based on regular season and then gets fired because of the playoffs.
Well, I don't know if he should have gotten fired, because when it comes down to it, players play. But there is something to be said for a coach that can gets his players to raise their games, because besides DeRozan and Lowry, who maybe they're the problem, the team has been reworked multiple times in the past few seasons, and still they keep losing. But even though I don't think Phil Jackson's the greatest coach of all time, like some do, I believe it's Popovich. But Phil Jackson, one thing he did do is he took the Bulls teams and the Lakers teams who were knocking on the door and turned them into, and motivated them and turned them into dynasties. So there's a lot of value in a coach that can motivate his players to raise their game come playoff time. But yeah, I don't think Casey really deserved to be one of the guys who gets fired for his players choking.
That's always tough with coaches. It's like you can say anything about hiring them.
Well, one thing about that is Doc Rivers, when he had the great team, they gave him multiple years because he kept getting injuries and stuff. But at some point, you have to say, okay, this is the end. But the thing was, the Raptors got better every single season. So unlike Doc Rivers, they weren't getting worse; they were getting better. So that's why I don't understand that decision.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to discuss for this episode is the MVP and award voting. Not a lot of people know this, but before, I don't know exactly when it changed, but there was a time when players actually voted for who the MVP and the defensive player of the year was. So, do you guys, with a lot of controversy surrounding who should actually be the MVP, like more so than in previous years, do you guys think we should go back to that? The players have their NBA Players Association awards, but those don't go in your Hall of Fame stats or anything. Do you guys think that it would be a good idea to revert back to that system? Because I'll let you go first, Zach.
In my opinion, the players shouldn't be able to vote. I think obviously the writers have their opinions and subjectivity plays a role in who they vote for also. But I just think adding the players who play against, who they're voting for, have discussions with them, talk trash with them. Like, I just think including that kind of conflict in the voting process would not be healthy for the awards.
I think you have to find a nice balance, like with the All-Star game. I don't think it can ever be perfect. Like, there's always going to be too much of like player voting or whatever, or fan voting. But I think the more variables you can add, or the less variables you can add, with more people voting, especially the people that are actually playing the game, would be good. I think it might be good to have a nice balance though between the two, because if it was all players, you'd see a lot of team bias. But I think a little bit of that is good from teams like the Timberwolves, or a team that doesn't have a player on it that's considered for MVP. They can give an honest opinion about someone else that isn't maybe a rival, and that's very helpful. So I think that, in comparison with the writers and the media, would be good to create a good voting system for the MVP voting.
Yeah, I would go, if it's up to me, I feel like the players should vote, because Zach, you do bring up a good point. I've heard, Wilt Chamberlain's probably his most famous season. This was the year he averaged 50 points and 25 rebounds. But he did not win MVP. Bill Russell did. And part of the reason he didn't win was because a lot of players resented Wilt Chamberlain. Back then they voted, and they voted for Bill Russell. Maybe you could say, oh, he was the best player on the best team, but his numbers didn't even compare that season to Wilt's. There was no argument. There was no competition between the two in that season. Yet Bill Russell still managed to walk away with MVP. However, nowadays you don't see that much animosity between players. I suppose someone like Durant would probably get jilted if he had an MVP level season, just because the players are dislike
and that's
him.
why you have to maybe put it in as 10% of the vote. Something small, but it should be something.
Yeah, 10 or maybe 25, something that feels more significant. But to me, it's just that when you're the Defensive Player of the Year award, it's not something that a watcher of the game, even attentive ones like some of the sports writers, can really get a feel for unless you're on the court. Like, I don't notice Gobert's impact nearly as much as I notice Draymond Green's, for instance. Yet he won Defensive Player of the Year, and I don't think you're going to hear any players complaining about that. Even Kyrie himself said that the players' MVP would have been LeBron because of just how good he is, but the people's MVP was Harden.
And I like James Harden, but recency bias is a thing with how we just watch the playoffs and we're just absolutely disappointed with James Harden. And he did have a great season, and we do forget about that, so I can give him credit there, but I don't think, we can take anything away from LeBron. So. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I didn't watch the award show, because I think that's the real reason they're awarding they're giving out the awards later, so that they can have the award show. Did you guys watch the award show? Because I don't know anyone who did.
It was no question in my mind, and I act like Donovan Mitchell was going to win Rookie of the Year. I mean, I knew Ben Simmons was going to win. I just wish Donovan Mitchell would have. But all the awards, I mean, Lou Williams winning Sixth Man. The only award that was a surprise was the Hustle Award of the Year, which went to Markieff Morris or Marcus Morris. Or
Well, no, wasn't that
whatever,
Amir Johnson?
Oh, whatever. They all look the same. See,
Exactly.
there you go.
So,
They do
so
look
yeah,
the
so
same.
sounds like I'd have to actually check the ratings, but the award show isn't the draw that they seem to think it is. I think it was more fun to have the speech at a game early in the playoffs and have people, and to not have
It
to
was
deal
more
with the
fun to
recency
see Peyton
bias.
Manning roast Kevin Durant in front of Russell Westbrook. That was more fun.
Yeah, I just prefer it. I just like when it happened earlier.
Yeah, because then you didn't have the playoffs influencing people's opinions without actually influencing the vote. Thanks for listening to episode 3 of the 3&D podcast. The awards was something I wanted to talk about to sort of stall and fill up the time between free agency deals. If you're looking at the screen right now, you can see what I'm thinking about, and you can guarantee you're going to be seeing quite a bit of discussion on this. We're going to wait until Wednesday. This is Sunday night. I'm recording this, but we're going to wait until Wednesday, July the 4th, to try and see if anything else goes down. You can already see the effects of LeBron's having on the signings and the moves that the Lakers have made. So we're going to see what goes down in the next few days before we record our LABron reaction, but you know for sure that I'm pretty excited. And follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'll have the links in the description this time. Working on making the channel, and I hope you like the thumbnail. By the way, we've got a guy making thumbnails for us now. His link will also be in the description. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your 4th of July.